Well, every day I can hardly wait to wake up and roll over in bed, turn on my phone, and check Twitter to see the next chapter in an unfolding story, the battle between DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, run by Elon Musk and his hand-picked wizards, versus the deep state. It's incredible to see. He's got this team of young guys. They're all in their 20s or even their teens. They all have fun nicknames. One of them goes by the name Big Balls, and I ain't afraid to say it. These are coding geniuses who are working their way through various government spending databases. They went through USAID, which is a massive 40 billion plus slush fund for every crazy woke scheme around the world. They did so much revealing that President Trump just abolished the whole department. Now they're moving on to the Department of Education, and soon they'll be unleashed on the Pentagon itself, nearly $1 trillion a year. Well, this isn't sitting well with the Democrats, who are invariably the beneficiaries of all this. Let me show you a beautiful moment, and this is worth it in itself. A security guard standing in front of the doors and just not moving when a gaggle of entitled Democrat congressmen demanded him to, and just the forlorn look on his face. Give this guy a prize. Take a look at this wonderful exchange. That's Maxine Waters, and a fossilized Democrat entitlemaniac. Take a look.
Are you prepared to stand here all night if we decide to stay?
I guess, yeah.
All right, well, you just stay right there then. And you just stay and stand.
Why are you letting us go to that desk like we were able to do last year?
No, he's not. He's not a U.S. employee.
This is a public institution.
Did Elon Musk hire you?
Who do you work for?
Who do you work for?
Are you not aware?
Look them in the eye. Come on, hold your face up. Look at him. Let him see you. This is him. Look at it. What's your name? Tell us your name. Give me that ID again.
Giving you the ID, I showed it to you.
So what?
I showed you the ID.
You do what?
I showed you the ID.
Could you let me see the ID again? Huh?
No.
No? Will someone else ask him for the ID? Will you ask him for it? He won't let me see it again. You didn't see it. You didn't see it. They didn't see it.
Well, he held the line just like Big Balls is holding the line every day. They're trying to dox these kids and get them fired. By the way, yesterday, Donald Trump was asked aboard Air Force One if he trusts Elon Musk. He almost laughed it off as a ridiculous question. Here's Trump's answer to that.
And I've had a great help with Elon Musk, who's been terrific.
Bottom line, you say you trust him.
Trust Elon? Oh, he's not gaining anything. In fact, I wonder how he can devote the time to it. He's so into it. But I told him to do that. Then I'm going to tell him very soon, like maybe in 24 hours, to go check the Department of Education. He's going to find the same thing. Then I'm going to go to the military. Let's check the military. We're going to find billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud and abuse. And, you know, the people elected me on that.
It's clear the regime media is trying to drive a wedge between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Here's the cover of Time magazine. The president was asked about that too, and his answer was classique. He didn't even know Time was still around. Did you?
Mr. President, do you have a reaction to the new Time magazine cover that has Elon Musk sitting behind your resolute desk?
No. Is Time magazine still in business? I didn't even know that.
It's incredible to me to see the shoe on the other foot. You will recall that for a better part of a decade, Democrat politicians had riveted themselves straight into Silicon Valley, and it was the political deep state that was telling the Twitters of the world what to do. It's incredible to see the tables turned, and now Twitter is not just telling the Democrats what to do, just cutting off their slush funds by the billions. Joining us now to talk about this is someone who has been tracking big tech for, well, really since the beginning of social media and its interface with the political system, our friend Allum Bokhari, who is the managing director of the Foundation for Freedom Online. Allum, great to see you again. We got to get you a nickname, by the way.
Not sure I can compete with Big Balls.
You know what? I love saying it because it's so silly, and you can just get, there's sort of a dorm room frat boy aura to these guys, but I think sometimes frat boy phraseology is for jocks who don't study, who just fool around. These guys are super smart brainiacs, sort of in the mold of Elon Musk himself. In fact, several of them were his former interns. And they have that banter, they have that self-deprecating humor, but they bring the big smarts. They have managed to do more auditing of the government in the last week than I dare say any auditor general has done in the last decade. Fill in some blanks for our viewers. What's really going on?
Well, it's been truly incredible to see. Just over the past week, we saw an entire U.S. government agency, U.S. Agencies for International Development, USAID, with a $40 billion budget just get completely dismantled because the DOGE boys exposed that it was what we've been tracking at the Foundation for Freedom Online as well, that USAID really became a slush fund for far left NGOs, for foreign influence operations that were geared towards advancing online censorship and really geared towards undermining the domestic political opponents of the blob in Washington, D.C. And that's just one example. They're also going to now look into the Pentagon as well, which, the Pentagon's supposed to be for national defense. In the Biden administration, in the Biden years, the Pentagon was funding organizations like NewsGuard, which is a private for-hire censorship shop that builds blacklists of disfavored news outlets. The Pentagon gave them, I believe, over $700,000 under Biden. So you see, across so many government agencies, you just see the censorship industry being bankrolled. You see partisan NGOs and nonprofits being bankrolled. And you see agencies just going way, way beyond what they were founded to do.
I understand foreign aid, and I understand some of it can be charitable, but I think much of it is designed to promote a country's national interests. But it seems like it was sort of this private crypto government on the side. I mean, truly a deep state that had its own will. Here's a tweet that the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, put up. And he was saying that all these NGOs and civil society groups had opposed a certain measure. I think it was a mining measure. But without the USAID money and manpower to gin up the street protests, he posted a photo from overhead showing a few dozen people. And you saw Viktor Orban of Hungary saying similar things. And you've seen people in Ireland saying similar things, that USAID was financing color revolutions around the world, that it was ginning up opposition to conservative populist leaders, and that without that money, this whole left-wing movement, political movement that faked being grassroots, is just gone. It was an American astroturf, as they say, not real grassroots, but fake grass, astroturf. And it was run by Samantha Power, if I got her name right, who was a hardcore, lifelong Democrat. I can't believe she was allowed to stick around until a few days ago.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. To really understand this, you gotta take a big step back into history and look at when these organizations were founded and for what purpose they were founded. So USAID and other organizations like the National Endowment for Democracy, which similarly to USAID gives out all of these grants around the world, millions and millions of dollars. Nothing compared to USAID, which had a $40 billion budget. But they were all Cold War assets. So their purpose, their original purpose, was to spread U.S. soft power and build movements to undermine international communism and the Soviet Union and the Soviet Union's assets. And they were very, very successful at this. Don't get me wrong. You go back to the 1990s and you'll see articles in the Washington Post, in the New York Times, praising organizations like the National Endowment for Democracy for doing out in the open what the CIA used to do covertly in terms of regime change. And that's I think pretty much a direct quote from the Washington Post's David Ignatius in 1991 when he's describing the National Endowment for Democracy. USAID performs a very similar function. But while its initial, what we're dealing with here is you have this huge global apparatus of soft power, which had a purpose during the Cold War, fighting communism, fighting America's global enemy, the great global enemy, the Soviet Union, that then becomes purposeless after the Berlin Wall falls and rediscovers its purpose after 2016 and gets turned around, weaponized, turned on the American people, turned on the global populist movement, because the deep state decides that its number one enemy in the absence of the Soviet Union is Donald Trump and the populist movement. And that's what we're dealing with there.
You are so right. You know, I remember I used to work a long time ago for the great John O'Sullivan, who was an attaché to Margaret Thatcher when she was PM, and then he was, I believe, with the Daily Telegraph in the UK. And he was really part of he was attached to the period of time where the Berlin Wall fell. In fact, O'Sullivan wrote a book about Thatcher, Reagan, and Pope John Paul II, and how they sort of together helped bring down the Berlin Wall and ended the Cold War. And when the Solidarity movement in Poland, in that Polish shipyard of Gdansk, started mobilizing, there was a ton of Western actors and helpers, whether it's fax machines they were giving or just advice. Absolutely. And that was, in doing so, Allum, they probably saved, God forbid, a hot war would have happened during the Cold War. They would have saved millions of lives, and to have a peaceful collapse of the Soviet bloc, you can't even measure that in trillions of dollars because all the blood saved. So give credit where it's due, that there were some State Department and CIA operatives who helped bring an end to the Soviet Empire peacefully. But you're so right. We've got this massive deep state permanent military industrial complex that's like a shark. It's got to keep moving forward. It's got to keep eating or it dies. And it's decided to eat not just political allies like Hungary and El Salvador, but turn on Americans itself. You mentioned the News Guard. That's a censorship organization paid by the U.S. Air Force to attack North American media. I think you might know that a few years ago, there was a military contractor at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock that was hired by the U.S. Naval Intelligence to do a workup on rebel news. What have we got? First of all, I'm not even a good swimmer. So why is the Navy coming after me, Allum? I mean, on a more serious note, like what on earth are they doing? Is it just about giving contracts to their friends and making everybody rich? Why would they take on rebel news? Maybe it's because we were really the only outfit in Canada that was pro-Trump. But that is not a legitimate expenditure. And if Elon Musk and Big Balls and the rest of those lads wind up cutting tens of billions or even $1 trillion, or I think $2 trillion was their goal, I don't think America's going to be any weaker. In fact, I think it'll be stronger, like when Elon Musk cut Twitter by 80% and the product got better. It's just a miracle to behold. And it's just amazing.
Yeah, well, you mentioned fax machines in Gdansk, and you can see the same thing in the modern era, where during the Arab Spring, the State Department was trying to keep social media platforms alive across the Arab world and make sure the forces of destabilization in the region against its enemies had access to Twitter, had access to Facebook. And this ties into why they became so concerned with online censorship and controlling social media, because what they saw as an asset during the Arab Spring, they saw as undermining their own power in their own countries, the power of the establishment, the power of the blob. When Donald Trump won the election, when Brexit happened in the UK, they suddenly realized, oh no, social media is going to undermine this system that they had in place for decades, where they'd have a very friendly mainstream media that controlled the public's access to information. Suddenly social media broke that, which is why we've done this at the Foundation for Freedom Online. You track all the government funding to all of its soft power assets around the world. So much of it has been spent on combating so-called disinformation, which is, the pretext that these organizations use to advance social media censorship, to encourage governments around the world actually to regulate American tech companies. It doesn't sound like it's in America's interests for foreign governments to be fining and regulating and banning American tech platforms. But the establishment, the blob, including the foreign policy blob, sees it as very much in their interests to stop social media's encroachment on the legacy media, stop it from weakening its stranglehold over the flow of information. And I think, the past election shows that they really did fail, and that's why that blob is now being dismantled. Because what essentially happened is, the foreign policy blob did a great job during the Cold War. No question about it. They won the Cold War without really firing a shot. But, what happened, and you see the same thing happening throughout history, whether it's Roman praetorians or Turkish janissaries, the people who were entrusted with defending the United States, defending the West, decided that the Western public itself had become a threat, and, the West needed to be defended from itself, and they were the people to do it through this vast censorship apparatus. Yeah. And, now that's being dismantled.